What's up guys, my name is Ace, and now that I've got a good handful of hours into Black Ops 6, I wanted to share my early initial impressions of the game. Keeping in mind, I do plan on doing like a week 1 review when I can look at things a little more comprehensively, but a lot of people want to know just my early thoughts on this, so that's what we're going to be doing today. Of course, many of these opinions will evolve over time as I get more gameplay time in. These are just my early initial thoughts. The first thing I noticed right away when I booted the game up compared to the beta is it does look better and it sounds a lot better. Like in the beta, I noticed a lot of the textures were a little on the blurry side, the weapon models were often slightly blurry, and I'm not experiencing that at all with launch now, which is great. But more importantly with the sound, I just found the audio is so much more clear in the launch of the game. And this is without using that enhanced setting. I actually didn't like that enhanced setting at all. I'm just using the standard Treyarch mix with that enhanced thing turned off. And everything sounds really nice and clear. I'm pinpointing sounds really effectively, including footsteps, which I'm going to take a deeper look at in a video within the coming weeks, of course. But immediately, those are the first two things that stood out to me when I jumped into my first games of Black Ops 6 compared to the beta. Circling back though, a quick note on visibility. While the game in general looks really nice and clear compared to the beta, and I'm not seeing any blurriness, I will say that I've had some visibility issues on some maps or in some situations, just the way the lighting hits character models, for instance. I have run into a good handful of situations where I have an enemy on my screen and they just blend in so much they're practically invisible in that situation. It's not like it's happening all the time on all of the maps or anything, but it's happened enough in my short amount of playtime that I do feel it's worth a mention here. Another thing I noticed is I'm having zero performance-related issues on PS5. Unlike in the beta, where at least in many matches I was getting a lot of skips and stutters and freezes, I haven't experienced that at all so far with the Black Ops 6 launch. Also, on my end at least, no packet loss. I have seen some people complaining about that and having an issue with that. On my end, I haven't experienced any packet loss yet, so things are running really smoothly for me. Next, let's talk about connection a little bit, and I've got to say the connection experience is just hit or miss. I think that's the best way to describe it. Sometimes everything feels great, and then others, I get like strings of games where I just feel like I'm a little bit behind everybody else. Like my time to kill is slower than the amount of time it takes for me to die. It feels like I die almost instantly to somebody that hit me 5 times with a full auto gun, whereas on my end, for me, it takes me the appropriate amount of time to fire 5 shots and kill somebody, and that's obviously really frustrating. I experienced that a bit throughout the beta as well, the first weekend especially. And this isn't new for the launch of a COD game, so I'm sure it will improve over time, but I hope it improves quickly because when this happens, it can be incredibly frustrating. Like there's just nothing you can do. You can play a situation flawlessly, stack the odds in your favor in a gunfight, and it just doesn't matter because you die in the blink of an eye. On the positive side, at least, the hit detection feels great. If I shoot an enemy, I hit the enemy, and I can't really recall any situations where I've like shot directly through enemy players and felt like I deserved a hit but didn't get one, outside of when players are transitioning into last stand. I've definitely felt some ghost bullets happen in those scenarios, and that can be really frustrating. Next, let's talk about maps a little bit, and for me, I would say the maps are kind of hit or miss. I'm not really overly blown away by any of the maps. There's no maps in this game where I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing, definitely going to be a fan favorite. But I will say I at least like a good handful of them, like Vault, quite a good map. I've only played Vorkuta a few times, but in those times that I played it, I've enjoyed myself with that. Skyline's playing great, especially with the changes. Same thing with Rewind and Scud. Those little changes they made, I think improve things nicely, and I'm enjoying all of those maps. And then when it comes to Payback and Babylon, well, I generally don't like maps that are that small. As far as small maps go, I'm actually really enjoying those maps. I think they play really well considering how small they are, and I actually enjoy playing them quite a bit more than I usually enjoy those tiny maps. But then for a tier of maps where I'm just not a big fan of, Lowtown. It feels like a big maze. There's a lot of crazy angles and a lot of verticality mixed in there as well, and I'm just not a big fan of that map. I wouldn't say I hate the map, like I don't mind playing on it, but I also don't really like it. I don't get excited when it pops up to be voted for. Same thing with Protocol. I'm not a huge fan of it. It seems to play more like a 2-lane map rather than a 3-lane map, and I'm not a big fan of that. I just feel like there's not quite enough room to like move around and flank and stuff. Red Card's another map where I haven't loved my playtime with it so far. I suspect part of that is due to the spawns. I find on Red Card, it seems when you spawn in, you're always way at the back of the map, and it takes a long time to get back into the fight in many situations. So that might be the main reason I dislike the map. It might not be the map itself, but the spawns on that map. And then there's one last map I want to talk about here that I really dislike, and this is Subsonic. This is my least favorite map in the game. I just feel, even when I play well on the map, I just don't feel like I'm getting a good flow with things. The cover placement's a little awkward. The fact that it's a small square-shaped map as well makes spawns really strange to deal with. and it's a map that I've already started actively avoiding in some cases where I'm just really not in the mood to play it. I'll back out of a game if that gets voted for sometimes. So yeah, when it comes to maps, I've got to say it's kind of a mixed bag, and it's one area of the game where I'd say they're not really excelling when it comes to the overall map rotation. There are very few maps that I get genuinely excited to play when they pop up. After that, on a related note, let's talk about spawns a little bit. I've seen a lot of people commenting and posting that the spawns are absolute trash at launch so far. And I'll be 100% honest here, I always will be when it comes to spawns. I'm always very highly critical of spawns because they're so incredibly important to the game, and I want them to be the best they can be. And I've got to say, I don't agree with that statement that the spawns are absolutely terrible right now, at least if we're looking at the general spawn logic for the primary game modes that I play. So Domination's my primary mode, but I sometimes dabble with like Team Deathmatch or Kill Confirmed in core, not face-off. I have generally found the spawns so far to at least be intuitive, and they also seem to handle a fair amount of pressure before flipping. They're not the constantly flipping all over the place kind of spawns that are really hard to keep tabs on at any given time throughout a match, at least on most of the maps. It's generally quite intuitive to know exactly which side of the map the enemy is spawning on and which side of the map my team is spawning on. So my experience with the general spawn logic so far has actually been quite good. In saying that though, I'm sure there's a lot of room for tweaks and improvements with spawns still, and I'm sure some people are going to point out specific like map and mode combinations or specific spawn points on specific maps that are problem areas, and perhaps I just haven't run into those yet, so I'm not going to say that the spawns are perfect at this point. It's just too early to say. But my initial impression of the general feel of the spawns overall has been quite good, while acknowledging that there's also going to be room for improvement, and I'm sure they will be making some adjustments and tweaks over time. But after that, let's talk about progression a little bit, mainly the pace of progression. So far, when it comes to both player progression as well as weapon progression, I honestly feel like things are pretty appropriate where they're at right now. Now, keep in mind, I'm somebody that likes the grind, so I don't want to just immediately unlock everything and have all of my guns max rank within a week, and I don't want to be prestige 10 within a month or anything, so I like a bit of a grind, but obviously I also don't like when it feels like an extremely slow slog. So for my preferences at least, I feel like they have hit a nice middle ground there with progression. It seems appropriate right now. I feel like I'm leveling at a reasonable pace, especially considering the fact that I don't have double XP tokens. And it's the same thing with weapon progression. I feel like it's taking a fairly appropriate amount of time to grind through those attachments. It's not going to happen instantly, and if you are somebody that wants everything unlocked right away, it may feel a bit too slow, but for me, it feels pretty good. After that, let's talk matchmaking a little bit, because this is an area where I have had some pretty big struggles so far in my limited playtime. The matchmaking algorithm has been a little bit hit or miss, but on average, very, very rough for me. And right up front with this, I want to mention that I have had some easier matches or some mixed games sprinkled in, and those are the ones you're going to tend to see on YouTube, so you might be looking at the gameplay and being like, what are you talking about? You're performing just fine. You're seeing my highlights here, not my usual experience. With my usual experience, I've had some pretty big chunks of incredibly sweaty and frustrating matches, and it just doesn't seem like the algorithm lets up on me at all. Like, it feels like, even though I'm playing public matches, it feels like I'm playing in some kind of tournament or something, and I get the feeling like I can't branch out and try new things if I want to be able to kill anybody. I feel like I have to use my best setups already, sometimes even to just break even, and that's a really frustrating feeling as somebody that's historically been noticeably above average in Call of Duty, to try your absolute hardest with the best possible items just to barely keep your head above the water. Now, I suspect at least part of this is also combined with that desync issue I talked about earlier, where time to kill versus time to die just doesn't seem to line up on my screen. But at this point, I really want to branch out and try new things and level up new guns and stuff, but with so many of the lobbies I get into, there is zero room for error, and therefore, if I'm not using the absolute best things, I don't stand a chance. It feels like I'm playing against top-tier players that never miss and have absolutely inhuman reaction times due to that desync. So if you were hoping to hear with this video that SBMM's been tuned down or adjusted, no, it seems like it's pretty much the same system as the past, and right now with a bunch of people playing the game, especially a lot of really dedicated fans playing day 1 or day -1, then of course that matchmaking algorithm can work at its full potential, and therefore if you're a really good player, you're going to be playing against other really good players on a fairly consistent basis. And with that, that's pretty much it as far as my initial impressions go. Again, like I said, in about a week's time, I want to do like a full, proper, comprehensive week 1 review. But so far, based on my initial impressions, while the game's not flawless by any means, and I'm sure there's plenty of room for weapon balancing or some spawn tuning, for instance, the one big thing I've been feeling throughout this launch period so far is the game definitely feels polished. I haven't been running into a ton of bugs, no game-breaking bugs by any means. The only real noticeable gameplay-related bug that I've found so far that is frustrating, and I hope they can get this fixed, is sometimes on the larger maps, If teammates are far enough away, they don't appear on the edge of your minimap, and that can be really frustrating at times. You can have 5 other teammates alive in the game, and yet when you look at your minimap, you don't see any of them anywhere, not even on the edge of the minimap. And that can sometimes make it difficult to see what's going on with spawns or just the general big picture of the match. But outside of that, I've been actively looking for things to take note of to point out for a video like this, and that's the only gameplay related one I've really noticed. Outside of that, just some weird display things with your XP after a match. It seems like the XP is calculating properly, but sometimes it shows you're getting negative XP, for instance, when that's not actually the case. It's just a display bug. But yeah, in general, it does feel like a very polished experience and not something where we're going to be waiting weeks or months for some basic bug fixes to take place. So there we go. Those are my initial impressions, and this is where I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. For those of you guys that have played Black Ops 6 so far, how are you feeling about things based on your limited playtime? Are you generally enjoying the game or not so much? Are there specific issues that you have or specific things you want to mention that are positives? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.